don't underestimate the effort of data-drivenness of data in general in the people function, and start early, right? So I think there's so much opportunity and data that we have in the team that we don't really leverage well, and there comes so much insight from like a good structured approach on how engaged are people, where are people not happy, where do people develop generally, what are like basically core ingredients for success and leadership, for success in an organization. There's so many different angles to take from there, and I think we often underestimate investing in that.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the HR Leaders Podcast. A little bit of a different episode today. Today we're here at HelloFresh. I'm joined by Johannes Wilberg, who's a Senior Vice President of HR for HelloFresh. Enjoy. Hey Johannes, how are you?
I'm doing well, Chris, thanks. How are you?
Not too bad. I bet you're thinking, what have the team signed me up for today? And I'm also thinking the same thing. How are you?
Things are great, things are good, so cannot complain. We're in basically now entering peak period here, end of year performance review conversation starting out and the prep for this. So
nice.
All hands on deck and everyone into making this a great experience, right? So
where would you give your sort of level of HelloFresh cooking skills at a scale of 1 to 10?
I think I'm okay. I'm probably like a bit better than average, probably 6 or so, I'd say.
6. You're saying that now. I think you're saying that to make me feel better. And once we get started now, you're going to be a whiz, a chef wizard, and I'm going to look really bad.
You have the better track record, I think, Chris, with your early childhood experiences there, right? So
I shouldn't have mentioned it now. I feel like I set myself up. There's a high pressure on me. Let's jump straight in and we can start cooking as well. Whilst we do that, tell everyone a little bit about your background and your sort of journey to where we are today. And let's just jump in. I'm going to get my chopping board out and I'm going to start prepping. We can do that at the same time.
Sounds good. We'll get going. So yeah, about myself. So actually, I'm probably, when I listen to your podcast, because I think I'm now more of a rare species, actually, being one of the people in that position that has actually been in HR career for the whole 15 years I've been in.
Really?
Basically right now. So I actually majored in HR and innovation entrepreneurship at university.
Okay.
Following that, first job was in consulting. So I worked basically, I need to just activate that here. I worked with BCG for nearly 10 years, starting
nice.
In the consulting side. So I worked. So
you're a recovering consultant then? Is that what you're saying?
you could say that, yeah. And just after 6 months doing something in a variety of roles, I pretty quickly moved back into the HR space again.
Nice.
And worked most exclusively on HR topics. So I was actually then one of 2 global HR experts back then at BCG when they started the expert track setup and consulting. Yeah. This was the thing, and to go away from just having pure generalists, having also a couple of people that just focus on one area. So I was one of 2 in that lucky position there. So I worked pretty much on any HR topic that you can imagine along the HR value chain, but for abundance of different industries. So that's where that started. Lots of exposure to lots of different challenges, of course. And that was basically BCG time until the point when another opportunity within BCG popped up to actually build out what they call is the global HR knowledge management team, which is the knowledge backbone basically of the consulting side, right? So you have consultants up the front facing to the client, and then me and my team basically collect and make available all the great wisdom that the company's created over so many cases, and make sure that we can infuse this into any new case or an assignment that we're basically going to. So I built that team pretty much from scratch globally, so across all continents, more or less, over the last 2.5 years, and got obviously exposure to pretty much any larger HR case that was there pretty much in BCG at this time. And the other side of the role was also a lot of topic development, right? So you'd basically work on developing things. I worked a lot on HR operating models, on people analytics, actually. That's where that passion come from. And then also a lot of other areas around that, like strategic workforce planning was big for me also as like basically the expert at BCG on this one. And then HelloFresh opportunity came along, which is basically at the intersection of HR, which is what I love, but also the emerging firm context, which is something that I've been always like very passionate about. I think that has actually been a very, very exciting journey for me. Now starting at this at HelloFresh and actually being able to live this also. Oh, hey, here we go.
How are you getting on? I'm worried that my water's not boiling fast enough right now.
Oh, Jesus. Mine's too high, I think. So basically, back to this. So HR, which is pretty much what I would have loved, but emerging from context. Obviously, at BCG times, you work for mostly like S&P 500, DAX 30 companies, so large organizations. Not a lot of exposure to these types of firms, but I've, as I said, majored there. I also wrote my PhD thesis on HRM in emerging firms, so exactly at that intersection. And that was like kind of a unique opportunity for me. And to the day, this has been one of the probably best decisions that I've taken so far. So HelloFresh has been a fantastic journey, has been a very challenging journey as well. Like imagine going through also like all the COVID period, massive growth.
I can imagine. You kept me fed during COVID. Yeah. So nice. I said to the team, I've been a HelloFresh customer for about 5 years, I think, for a long, long time. And I think as, you know, my wife and I have two, you know, very busy full-time jobs, and we've got a daughter Robin, and being able to come home and just grab a menu and be like, okay, which one are we choosing tonight? Not having to think about it has been amazing for us as well. And I was really amazed at how I can only imagine how stressful it was in the back end, but the fact that you kept the supply chain going. Yeah,
this was a massive. This is a massive effort, right? You had like
I can imagine
massive demand spikes, weeks and weeks, like sometimes in the crazy periods, really significant, like 50% plus in some cases, in some markets, and some DCs. So that was really a stretch. But the team did super well. Like this was the time when everyone was like full hands on deck, 150%. Driving that forward. So that was pretty impressive. Yeah. And obviously from the people team... sorry, go ahead.
So Johannes, what are HelloFresh's core values?
Yeah, so HelloFresh, basically we have 7 core values at HelloFresh. The core essential ones that have been there already from the start and from when I've been is like 1, speed and agility. This is pretty much the top one for me, paired with relentless prioritization. Which is also super critical back at the time we just talked about when there was massive demand spikes. Then you have learning never stops, you have data-drivenness, and you also have one of my favorites, which is egoless environment. I think that combination is something that HelloFresh kept, I think, throughout the entire growth period. And this is also something I feel that is very different to many other organizations out there that have the size and the complexity of a HelloFresh. So you have obviously multi-geographic, physical and digital products combination that already creates quite some challenges, but also quite some opportunities. On the other hand side, you still kept that spirit alive of being very fast in how you take decisions and how you iterate things. And where this really comes to life in speed and agility is about actually always taking a very strong MVP type approach, being very hands-on and pragmatic in developing a first solution that is probably an 80%, which was something that was quite hard for me coming from consulting actually to get into, where you always do a 150%, right? But doing this and bringing this fast to customer, right? And then from there, you actually iterate this in an ongoing fashion. And by this, you actually achieve a better product in a faster time. And I think throughout all teams that we have, this is something that we really ingrain in the way that we work. And that makes us, I think, quite competitive and despite the size of the organization we have, be very fast in moving things forward.
How is that then realized in your people strategy?
Yeah, so I think it's a good question for people strategy perspective. I think a number of values basically combine here, right? So on the one hand side, you have exactly that. You have like a very speed and agile way of how you do things, but at the other side, it's all about like customer centricity for us as well, and our customers, the business, right? So making sure that we truly focus on what the business needs are and prioritize accordingly, using data, i.e. data-drivenness, to understand what are the trade-offs that we are making and where we can basically take calculated risks to move forward. And then also on the other hand side, be very relentless in how we prioritize the things that really matter and that really have impact. So for us, I think this is ingrained in all the things that we do. And like when we define people strategy, it's all about customer centricity and like applying the game to this in terms of delivering in a very speedy and agile way, in a very collaborative way, right? And this comes from iteration and speed and agility where you work with teams. I still think there is a lot of opportunity for us to grow in this and like actually become even better. But I think like this, if you look at it in HelloFresh and the people team terms, this is what makes us really strong as an organization. So
nice. Talking of speed and agility, how are you getting on over there?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. I'm trying to balance like talking to you and
Where
like,
are you
doing
now?
this, but I'm at cutting.
Now?
I'm
You're
basically I'm in step
Okay.
2, Chris, out of 6. So
Okay, you're in
you might
step 2,
you might have a slight advantage.
Yeah,
on me there.
I
need to talk more than you, right? That's the difficult thing.
So to be fair, I do have the advantage, right? Yeah, I've chopped the mushrooms, I've chopped the onions. I'm waiting for my pasta to finish boiling, and then I'll be off to fry the mushrooms in a second.
Yeah, that's good. Like I'm still far away from that, but that doesn't matter.
Okay,
So.
we're to give you a bit more of a distraction then, tell everyone a bit more about I know you have some internal mentorship programs, and I think your approach to mentorship programs is quite different from other organizations I spoke to. Could you walk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think maybe to start that off, like when you talk about learning and development and people development at HelloFresh, in line with our other core value, which is learning never stops. It's characterized as something where we focus a lot on learning in the day-to-day and learning on the job. So everything is basically built around this. Also, when we talk about programs and mentoring in a second, and it's basically at the core to make sure that we actually leverage the massive opportunities that we have in an organization and allow people to actually stretch themselves every day, learn every day. So part of the learning never stops piece is that you really essentially take every day as an opportunity and every task as an opportunity for professional growth. And that is something I think that's very powerful if you combine it with the right ingredients, so to say, right, on making that work. So what are these ingredients, right? I think number one, it's really about making sure that people actually have transparency about all the opportunities and understand these opportunities. And these come from, as I said, that powerful combination of being a very large organization that has quite complex challenges, that is basically in 18 markets with 7 brands, right, all across the world, which also provides a lot of opportunity for people internally in the organization to actually grow. And one key piece is to make sure people have transparency about this and know what are the internal opportunities. And we'll come to our internal mobility program in a second, right, that actually facilitates this. The other piece is basically about making sure the way that you structure how teams are working at HelloFresh is also quite targeted towards having a cross-functional experience. So you have tech, for example, right, where this is quite usual. You actually have an agile setup. We have alliances, tribes, squad logic here, and in each squad you have people from engineering, from design, from product that work together cross-functionally on solving problems in a very agile, i.e. speedy and iterative fashion. But also we apply this in other areas, in people, for example, right? So you have in people as well, teams that actually follow a strong agile approach and how we develop stuff on the people analytics side, on the people system side, but also right now something that I'm working on with the team, which is quite exciting and thinking about what actually that next iteration of people operating model could look like, where you build something that we'll call business solution teams, where you actually bring in people from different functions within the people function, trying to work on very focused business solutions to the point that we discussed before, right? Identifying these high value topics, and then we bring this together in a cross-functional way. So this is in the making and something that I'm quite looking forward to, because I think it will help a lot in also applying the successful approach to people. So this allows for learning a lot from other people cross-functionally. And I think one third pillar, when you think about this HelloFresh, that makes this really powerful here is really the focus on how you can actually build a leadership safety net around this, right? So we have actually invested quite a lot over the last years to build up a strong leadership team in HelloFresh across the board in every function. And this allows people that are having the opportunities to be stretched here to actually be able to try things out, but whenever they need to, they actually have that sparrings partner in the back that can provide them with the expertise, can walk with them through some of the scenarios and solutions that they provide, or also add additional insights to this. And I think this combination of all these 3 things, right, the structural part, the opportunities that this provide, ways of working, and the leadership safety net actually is very powerful in that regard, right? And in making sure that you actually facilitate a day-to-day learning. Now, what we're doing on the people team side actually to support this is just trying to amplify. So we try to amplify these things with the programs that we put in place. So we don't have a massive lineup of L&D programs here, but it's very focused and tailored to facilitate that cross-functional work, facilitate giving people the opportunities to work in different parts of the business, and making sure that people actually do, as part of these programs, learn on the job as well, while we provide them with mentorship, for example, to build that leadership safety net around them when doing so. So I think this is probably the powerful ingredient here on our end, on how we drive this forward. And I'm happy to share a bit more about what are these programs doing in order to facilitate this, and how does this look like.
Love that. How are you getting on? Where you at right now?
I'm at the onions now.
You're at the onions.
Don't push me, Chris.
I've chopped everything here. The pan's already on, ready to cook the onions and mushrooms. So no pressure.
You don't have to wait for me, Chris. It's all good, right? You can just go ahead.
I'm only joking. I'm joking.
Oh,
so
good.
You mentioned earlier the your mobility program. How does that all link back into the mobility program?
Yeah. So I think mobility program is all about the first part of creating transparency, right, and making sure that people have the opportunity to actually understand what are other opportunities out there in the whole of HelloFresh, but B, also make sure that people actually can very easily take up these opportunities. So the way that we do this is, of course, there's in the back also an approach on what is the relocation support that you get. But I think one of the core pieces that is really helpful actually there is to have a very, very lean process on how people can apply. So if you, let's say you, Chris, are interested in an opportunity, right, in the UK right now, working for headquarters here in Berlin, you basically talk to the line manager that has this position open, or the hiring manager. And then if you're interested, you basically apply, and you have a very streamlined application process there. So that means you have less interviews than typically an external person has, because we have obviously also all the internal insights on how you perform. And we try to make this a very quick and lean experience for you in that regard. And then you basically moving through that process quickly. And if everything pans out, we have a good agreement on what is the minimum transition times that you get. And then you basically have the opportunity to take up this new opportunity. So I think that's pretty powerful from an internal mobility program standpoint. And this is actually one of the core priorities that we want to double down on going forward. So if you think about our strategy going forward, this is something that we're really investing in. We have an own OKR team that's just only working on global internal mobility as a topic there. And this is something that's actually really, really exciting for me as well. There's massive support from our C-suite against this, which is something that I also believe in. Right now, I think we have still a lot of untapped potential in the global organization we are to actually provide people with those learning opportunities. So I think that is pretty powerful in that regard.
And how long has that been in place? Have you already seen sort of an impact on retention?
Yeah, so we started this rather a short time ago. Before, this was a bit more opportunistic. So that's why this is also such a big opportunity to formalize this, where we have, and there's a number of examples where people have done this in the past, have actually been quite successful. And the people who've done this in the past have been typically on very strong trajectories. And also partly with us in the company. One person on the team, for example, Freya, she's a senior director of international employee experience. She's actually started out as senior TA manager here in People Ops person very early 7 years ago on the Berlin team. And then as part of that role, she actually also hired for our Australian business back then. And then from that came an opportunity to actually move over and build the actual HR team in Australia. So she became the local head of HR in Australia. And then 2020, we had chat about how we can lift the function further, talking about how we can probably build also employee experience more to the foreground. And this is where our employee experience function started, that Jishin took over. So she came back to Germany, actually to Berlin, joining the team, building this up, and now very successfully driving employee experience on an international level there. So that's a pretty impressive story, I think. And we want to really facilitate more of this across the board. There's a number of other examples I think we have also in the tech space. One very powerful thing I think with HelloFresh, there's another example where, for example, our SVP of Product right now, most senior female leader in the tech organization, she actually started as a business analyst in the US back then, always had affinity for tech, moved into basically TPM role, like product management role there, and then basically developed further, moving back to global, taking on the topic here, and now actually is driving product and for a very sizable chunk of our tech business. So I think
how do you share those opportunities? Do you have sort of an internal talent marketplace, or
so this is something that, like, going forward, going to be pushed more. There's a number of things. So we have an internal job board, of course, as every other organization as well. What we also do is we feature like our most critical roles internally in our internal newsletter and communication. We say, like, this is some of the key roles that we're looking for. Are you up for it to apply? And this is cross geographically, right, across the whole organization. So people have that transparency. Also, what we do is, like, we actually have an interest group of people who say, actually, I'm interested in relocating or do this. So this is part of our personal development plan approach, right? Where you actually, people submit this as, I'd be open for an opportunity elsewhere. And then you have that pool of talent that you know is actually willing to move and they're interested, and they get like specific specific opportunities addressed to them on this. There's massive potential for me, and down the line, I'd like to take this to like that actually internal global talent pool where we actually actively use this as a sourcing pool for our TA team, right? First and foremost, before we go even outside, right? And this is part of that internal global mobility of our team and what we're driving going forward. But we also have programs already that facilitate this, right? And I think this is another element of that whole story and making this successful. So, for example, on the tech side, actually, one thing that's pretty cool, since we talked about Annie here with our SVP product, we have what's called Cascading program. People actually outside tech on a React basis. So whenever we open like a junior product owner role, actually have the ability to apply even if they're non-tech, right? And then I get actually partnered up with a senior person, a senior PO, and basically, first of all, first time they shadow that person, then the person shadows them, and then they basically get responsibility for their own product. So that's been very successful in the past to actually build internal talent across functions, right? So you're like, typically people think a lot vertically, right, in terms of how can I grow within my function. I think one of the big pieces of continuous learning and telling people is like fostering this across functional setup there. So that's something I think we double down on a bit. And there's, I think, two other really cool examples that we have. The other way of how we facilitate what we talked about initially, opportunity part, working actually on the job and cross-functional things, is like two programs we have. One for graduates to start, which is called our Fast Stream program, which is basically entry point for top talent graduates to basically joining HelloFresh straight out of university. And then they basically get on a 2-year program where they do 4 assignments, 6 months each, across a variety of functions. One of them is an international one, where they actually get a lot of exposure to different teams, different functions, working quite functionally also, stretched a lot on these assignments. And then post is like go into the business, and we have like 100% success rate of them.
Wow.
Very strong attention mechanism also, and this is a really amazing program. We also have this, of course, for our existing leaders, which is basically our internal, we call Future Leaders program. That is also basically trying to facilitate on the job parts, bringing those people together, working on actual business challenges across the group. So this is a global program, right? Where you have people.
What does that look like? Is that a mixture of in-person and virtual?
Yeah, you have like on-site events, like a once-a-year summit where people come together. And to just very quickly make sure I don't burn stuff here.
We need to get some moments for the clips on LinkedIn. So if you want to set something on fire, we'll get more views.
Yeah, no, yeah, maybe you need to put some massive oil in there, and then you can get going. No, I think that's basically one bit there. And on that program, to come back to this, the way this works is you have those on-site events where everyone meets, right, in person. They work together in projects on actual business problems that we ideally try to solve going forward. Nice. And they then pitch this to like a broader audience working cross-functionally. So you have people like that come from marketing that work on operations challenges, for example, and vice versa, right? Which is pretty powerful. On that program as well, this is start with that leadership safety net, which comes in form of a strong mentoring program. So every FLP participant is paired up with a senior person in the organization to mentor them. They have the ability to also take some additional coaching on that journey. And also there actually is a lot of opportunity for people to peer coach and like work within this group and network on what are the current challenges they have, pull on this group to actually deliver against some of their daily things that they need to do. And then on top of this, you have very curated L&D offering that focuses a lot on making sure that that whatever is needed for these people to move forward, you actually offer this through, for example, certain leadership trainings or stuff that is related to how we actually implement like a strong agile way of working setup for these people. So there is, I think, that combination of providing this on-the-job real-life opportunities, pairing this up with strong mentorship and safety network, and then making sure that these people also together like get a lot of opportunity to work on exciting stuff, right, for the organization.
It's also a good opportunity for them to be exposed to different functions, right, and parts and challenges of the business, because otherwise you wouldn't organically get that cross-pollination, especially when you have such a global workforce, right? Many of those leaders wouldn't even probably meet if they didn't have the opportunity to do that outside of those type of programs. And I can only imagine the sort of innovation that would come from those type of meetings.
Oh, absolutely. It's also always pretty impressive, I find, when you put these like highly talented people together and they then basically pitch a solution to a business problem. And it really triggers some very good discussions. And some of these things have actually ended up in becoming a live reality. So funnily, like this FSP program was actually born out of a FLP project. Right? So that's pretty cool. I think this is really powerful. I think one other element that I feel on top of this, so this is obviously targeted programs for targeted audience. One key thing that really makes this also scalable across the organization is a strong focus on personal development planning. We call our performance management approaches basically a foodie dialogue. So feedback, objectives, opportunities, development for individual excellence. So that's a nice acronym, foodie. And part of this is a strong conversation around what are the things, both short-term and long-term, that people want to develop or need to also to actually achieve their goals within their current role. But also one element of this is always looking 2 years out and understanding how that basically look like on a long-term basis, like 2 years out. What are people actually striving for and actually trying to achieve in the long run, so that you can build this into the plan that people actually have. And that I think is pretty successful, as we just started initially with our talent pool to make this mandatory, and now rolling this out across everyone to have these conversations on a regular basis and have a good understanding of what people need. And then this is paired with individual L&D budget that really targetedly looks at how can people achieve these goals and how can we help them drive this. So it's like shining through everything on making sure that on your day-to-day learnings, how we can enable you to basically reap full potential by providing opportunity, by providing senior mentorship, by providing those cross-functional team setups and projects for people to actually experience this. And this is, I think, a quite powerful hands-on approach to L&D, I'd say, compared to what I've seen in many other organizations.
From the leadership side, how are you holding them accountable for that, though? Are you linking it back to their compensation, their performance reviews? What does that look like? That's
a very good question. And just quickly, I think, pour the water out here for my pasta. Just curious once. The team probably want to eat this or have to.
They have to. You're going to make them.
No, I think I can take still a bit more. Accountability for this, good point. So I think there's two angles for this. Overall, as an organization, what we do actually is that we have what we call mandatory people OKRs for each function. So every function automatically inherits like a goal, independent of which function they are, that is related to how we can engage people, how we can retain people, how we can develop people. So develop is one core element of this. And then on an individual level, we basically, every team has to deliver against them. This is like ongoing basis. So we have quarterly pulse checks here at HelloFresh. You get a good sense, for example, on engagement and how people are trending. And then there's a very concrete action mechanism behind that going. Go with the water here. Just give me 1 sec.
On that point, then, I'm going to kind of jump into our quickfire round. Outside of the office, what are some of your hobbies and passions?
Yeah, so my whole life outside HelloFresh mostly is focusing around family. So I have 2 kids, and like try to spend as much time as possible there. Basically accompany them on their learning journey, right, that they have. So that's that. And other than that, for me personally, my balance is gardening. So I'm
Nice.
quite big into this. So we have a good chunk of a garden there, and like there's lots of work to do. Never finished, but that's the best thing about it, right?
That's
There's
the
always
thing about
opportunity.
gardening, right? I just bought a house recently, and my wife's like, "Who are you?" Because I'm like, my kind of de-stress on the weekend is to like, I'm like, she's like, "Why are you?" I'm like a perfectionist. The grass has to be perfect, has to be cut every at least once a week now. Not so much now because of the weather. And all of a sudden, I've kind of fallen in love with gardening. For me, it's like an escape from all the craziness at work and everything else, and I can just be in the moment, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Go
maybe
for it.
one other thing about this. So I actually also on the sports I do swim. I actually do life-saving classes also. Do with us once a week.
Oh wow.
On a voluntary basis. So that's also pretty something that I started during university, and like over 10 years now active in that organization. So German Life-Saving Association, and that's something that's also pretty cool. I actually never thought that I'd enjoy teaching so much, but actually that's also pretty nice. So this helps a lot on the sports side of it during during busy weeks.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of HR, we've kind of seen it evolve, right? I've been doing this since I was 17. I'm 36 now, and it's almost like a completely different function. That being said, if you could click your fingers and change one thing about HR, what would you change and why?
I think many people would answer HR to have a seat at the table. I think for me, it's probably that there is a bit more to this in terms of, it's not a thing really to change, but I think it's more in terms of how we're looking at HR work from both the business and the people team side, and actually introduce a little bit more of an egoless environment, I would say, in this. And what do I mean by this? I think for one, it's like on the business side, also review a bit their view on how to run an HR function, be very forefront about it, how you can do your job better. I think on the other hand side, on the HR side, is really listening also to the business. What is the problem that they have, and how can you support resolving this, and like take sometimes very thoughtful feedback also more into consideration. I think many times we're focusing too much on our own as a function, and same business sometimes focusing too much outside of their function on HR. If we can be a bit more egoless in this, I think this would be extremely powerful, and this will go a long way also into more towards true partnership, right, on this end, which I think we're all striving for in the end.
What would you say about yourself personally, your career journey? What would you say is the biggest investment that you've made in yourself?
I think it's actually taking the liberty to take time out of all of this.
Interesting.
I've been in the fortunate position where, like, in all my times at both BCG but also at HelloFresh, always had the opportunity to like truly take time out for myself. So round about every 2 years, I go out for 2 months, and I've kept that with this. If you plan this well, even in a position like this, it can actually work out quite well. And this is something that's super rewarding for me, right? Disconnecting a bit, like also recharging the batteries, and then spending time with my family as well, right? So we typically do 4 weeks of this to like a trip. Last 2 times we went to South Africa. Amazing, I can really recommend it. And the other 4 weeks is mostly like for myself and my wife actually to enjoy. And that's giving me a lot. So this is, in terms of investing in myself, I'm investing there, and like I'm fortunate enough that a company like HelloFresh and also BCG back then, I actually do support this quite well.
Yeah. Well, it's also good for everyone, right? One is the moments that matter, right? Where you want to spend that time with your wife and your kids, and it's also an opportunity for you to connect with them on a deeper level, because sometimes it's quite hard to, even if you have a week off, to completely disconnect and be present, right? Fully present in the moment. But also I've realized the hard way through my challenges with anxiety and over the years, that in order for me to be the best husband, the best dad, the best leader, I need to look after me first. I need to prioritize Chris and take time out in order for me to be the best person for everyone else.
Exactly.
So I love the fact that you're very strict about that, and that you make that, and your kids will never forget that. And I'm sure you come back so much more energized for your team, right? And the organization too.
Absolutely, right? And I think it's not to be underestimated, right? How much power comes from these times, how much innovative ideas come from this, right? Also, like the operating model ideas, for example, that I have right now. Like some of this is seeded in this time, right, where you can really think about stuff. So absolutely agree with this.
Who would you say is the one person that's had the biggest impact on your career?
The one person that really is probably a bit responsible for where I'm sitting right now is one of my leaders back at BCG, who unfortunately passed away last year due to cancer. Very unfortunate. He really made an impression on my career in a number of dimensions. One, as a leader, really, I think he was one of the, best people managers that I had in my whole career. Very invested, really interested, right, in like what you actually want to do. That taught me a lot about how I want to actually be as a leader going forward, right? And what do I want to do with my teams. So that's a massive impact on me as a people leader. And the other impact is just career-wise. He was just one person who was always behind me, like saying, look, like go this route, for example, taking up this global HR knowledge management team built up. He was the one that proposed this and says, look, this is the opening, like this is an opportunity, you should go for it. You should like basically take this. So I think you need these people in your life, right? That push you a bit over the edge in a way. And so like you go for it. So that definitely was the person that has had the biggest impact, I think.
So I think sometimes people see things in us that we can't see in ourselves, right? And and you said, you know, any one of the things I've learned over the last 600 episodes is that successful leaders I speak to, they kind of seek discomfort. You know, it doesn't feel good, it's scary, you're not always going to be prepared already, but it's where the most growth happens. And it's really what the moments that you look back on your career that really defined it as well. So I love that. I'm sitting here ready to eat, by the way.
Meanwhile, Chris, I'm also done now, finally. So so that's good. We can get everything on the plate.
Before we take a bite, go for it. Whilst you're plating it up, what's the parting piece of advice you'd give to all of those HR leaders out there that are going to be sitting in your seat one day? What advice would you give to them?
Don't underestimate the effort of data-drivenness of data in general in the people function, and start early, right? So I think there's so much opportunity and data that we have in the team that we don't really leverage well, and there comes so much insight from like a good structured approach on how engaged are people, where are people not happy, where do people develop generally, what are like basically core ingredients for success in leadership, for success in an organization. There's so many different angles to take from there, and I think we often underestimate investing in that insight and getting that insight early, right, through also building up, for example, people analytics capabilities in the team, like training people on how you can interpret data, how you understand data. And I think we've started here also quite early in this, and I think this paid off quite a lot. And I think that when I look also at like even very large organizations that I've been consulting in the BCG times, a lot of the times I think this was very much underweighted when you look at people functions, yet it bears so much potential for how you can actually successfully manage that function and actually like deliver truly to what matters to the business in the end.
Love that. Well, let's jump in and have a taste. I feel like we did pretty well considering we're under the pressure.
Absolutely. I think I just barely made it in the end, but now we just need to find those daring souls that want to try what I prepared. So I'll just.
Is that what you're doing? You're serving it up for everyone?
I'm serving up, of course. Like people should get something for the hard work that they're here watching.
I only have one plate here. Unfortunately, I only have one plate on my end, so I can't actually share it with anyone else.
You probably were too hungry, Chris, right?
Ivan,
all right.
Your performance review is coming up soon. You have to say it tastes nice.
Yeah, I'm going to.
So, good. Honest answer, Team UK, how did Chris do
Team
on
UK,
this?
honest answer.
That's like a 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10, I'll take it.
Nice, 8 out of 10. We need to have the team here try as well.
I'll pay you later.
If people dare. So we just have the topping here, I shouldn't forget this. Actually, it looks quite decent, I would say. What's the judges here in the room say?
Looks perfect.
Nice.
Good. Now you also need to try that. Maybe we do this when we are finished, Chris. To not spoil the moment.
Johannes, before I let you go, Johannes, where can people connect with you? if they want to reach out and say hello? And then where's the best place for them to check out HelloFresh?
Personally, definitely on LinkedIn. So please feel free to connect, reach out. I'm very happy to engage in any follow-up conversation there. And then for HelloFresh, obviously, we have abundance of awesome roles still also on the people team. So check out our careers page.
I appreciate you doing this and pulling you into this. This is the first for the HR Leaders podcast, and I really, really enjoyed it. For everyone listening, those links are already below. So wherever you're listening or watching right now, click the link in the description and you can check out HelloFresh's career page there. Apart from that, Johannes, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you again soon. It was a pleasure.
You too, Chris. Thanks a lot for having me. Have a great one.